Going to pull my hair out. Hello, my baby gorillas. And I hope you're hearing this time. Let's find out. Oh my God, honestly. Mic's not working. Can't do this, can't do that on the stream. This is then doesn't work. That then doesn't work. Am I having any sound?
One of the biggest market bubbles in history is popping. And my heart is breaking because I...
Sound. Going to pull my hair out. Hello, my... Oh, we've got sound. Oh my goodness, pop the chat. Unbelievable. Absolutely believable what it's like to try and get a live stream going. Oh my goodness, it's probably be better to pre-record, as though it's not much fun not being able to chat with you guys. What has been going on in politics? There's big things afoot, I would suggest. And I might actually do a thing on the Durant. The guys did. I've got a lot of respect for the two fellas on the Durant, Duran, and these fellas are excellent. But they were talking a wee bit about that Boris might have to resign, and I said that that's a possibility a wee while ago. But there's tons. I've got actually tons to talk to you about. But I'm just going to crack on with this. A thing on the Durant, the guy. Oh, there we go. Shut up, you. So, I'm just going to crack on with this because this is quite interesting. So, Charlie Kirk, Turning Point UK. Now, Charlie gets a lot of things on the money. I'm not really into it. I don't like him just for the sake of not liking somebody. If somebody does that, that's up to you. I'm into politics and discussing politics at any level with anybody, even whether I dislike them or not. Because I don't agree with somebody politically doesn't mean that I necessarily dislike them as an individual. That's very immature. They would have to have some very bad sets of beliefs for me to say, right, you're beyond the pale. From a political point of view, although a lot of Marxists probably are. So this is a classic example of somebody who, A, doesn't know what they're talking about, B, is basically a Holocaust denier, and C, somebody who's potentially been indoctrinated by what's going on, not just Americans, so we can't just point the finger at America. What's going on in British classrooms by the globalists. The globalists are pushing this Marxist agenda through the universities to indoctrinate basically the middle class into some form of Marxism. Little do they know it's not in their interest either. So Charlie does a good job, kinda, and I'm going to do a critique on what Charlie says, what this trans, everybody knows I'm a trans woman. This person isn't trans. Charlie's going to do a critique and answering, and I'm going to give him a different point of view from how he should be answering or how he should be questioning it. He's competent, don't get me wrong, he's a competent commentator, political commentator, but sometimes he just gets a wee bit off, and it's just a wee bit correction from his point of view, from Turning Point USA. But he is correct in a lot of the things he says.
Welcome to another episode of Debate Night. We're joined by founder of Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, and contributor for the Young Turks, Ben Carollo.
Or he's a contributor to the Young Turks who genocided, the Muslim Young Turks who genocided all the Christian Armenians, and I think they killed all the Greek Orthodox Christians as well, genocided them as well, not to mention the sex slavery of European women, just like they're doing in the UK now. By the Muslim rape gangs that have been allowed in to A, take over the country, and B, being allowed to displace the indigenous population, and now raping abused murderers by the conservative, by the globalists basically. I think not just the conservatives, but including the conservatives who are just letting unbridled amounts of men into the country who are not from here to do God knows what. And this is because they've obviously signed up to the Barcelona Process, Union in the Mediterranean, and also the UN Compact on Refugees, which is just to allow people to walk into our country so that we can like blame other people, blame the European Union judicial system where we're under, and blame judges in the UK for lefty lawyers. But the buck stops with Boris. Boris should be just kicking them out, and he's not doing that, so he's obviously complicit in it, because I think Boris comes from Klaus Schwab's leadership school as well, and he's just a shell for the globalists. It took me a wee while to work out how Boris worked in that, but Boris, I think, is actually a Klaus Schwab product, and thereby a globalist. So we're basically getting played that Boris is some right winger or some person that doesn't believe in Brexit, but what he's just been set up to do is further the globalist agenda, which the royal family, not including the Queen, but Prince Charles and potentially now William, are probably complicit in as well.
Tonight's topic is Marxism in America. First question.
So we've now got Fat Jink Yogurt on the genocidal Young Turks, talking about another genocidal proposition, which was Marx, who killed millions of people all over Europe and Africa and Asia. So they've killed millions of people everywhere. So we're going to get Holocaust deniers here, just like Cenk Uygur, a Holocaust denier of the Christian Armenians who were murdered, and the replacement of Byzantine by the Turks, which Turks are not from Turkey, Turks are from Turkmenistan in Central Asia. So they basically took over Byzantine and Constantinople and moved the indigenous population out, which is exactly what's happening in Scotland and the UK by the globalists as well.
Ben, please provide your best definition of Marxism and what you believe about the topic at hand.
Yeah, most definitely. See,
so this guy's a real dick.
When it comes to Marxism, a lot of people have a misunderstanding and think that it's about particular policies. But the reality is that it's centered...
It's not about policy, is it? That's just nonsense.
...on the role of the state. The belief that
the role of the state? Well, it depends. I thought Marx was actually looking for non-state. So what you have to remember that in, for example... And they'll jump about, I think they jump about here, but the tankies or people who are Leninists, they, or the Stalinists, they actually retained the state, and the state was wielded as power against the individual. And they also killed all, so there was the Bolsheviks, which were the tankies, and the Mensheviks, who were like the communist, anarcho-syndicalists, anarcho-communists, who were libertarian communists, and the tankies and the Bolsheviks were authoritarian communists. And there was an internal fight between those two, which you don't really get told a lot about as well. So the libertarian communists were killed by the Bolsheviks as well, and this has not been really addressed here either.
The state is an institution that exists to suppress the interests of one class or another,
which the authoritarian left did as well. So let's assume that this guy might be an actual anarcho-communist, like Antifa, anarcho-communist. Let me just get this. So let me just see if I get kicked off that. No, I'm still in. Thank goodness. Whoop. So, let's keep going. So,
right? Either under capitalism, that would be the dictatorship of capital, where capitalists suppress the interests of workers to the...
So they keep talking about suppression. The guy's on a show for the Young Turks, who have literally genocided whole groups of individuals, whole groups of people like the Armenians. He's now talking about Marxism, who have killed tens of millions of people worldwide, about 100 million people, in every country that the Marxists have been in. And he's talking about oppression. I mean, really, I think this guy has actually been dropped on his head, which probably explains why he's in the Young Turks.
The benefit of their profits. Now, under Marxism, the state...
under the profits, well, yeah, because it gives the freedom. There's corporatism, which is a genuine issue, and then which involves the government interfering in the free market. And then there's what this guy's talking about, which is just nonsense.
It serves the purpose of basically serving the interests of workers to the...
So, but what about, it's not, the world is not just made up of workers, and it's the entrepreneurs that create the wealth. This is where Marx was wrong. It's entrepreneurs. I can set up a one-man business and don't have any workers. So it's not the workers that create the wealth, it's the entrepreneur that comes up with the idea. It's the idea. Just if you think about it, if you're writing a book or producing a song, it's not the people that produce the actual song, it's your creativity that produces the work that then is sold, and it's yours. It's the workers are then employed if they choose to give you the labour in a manner that's appropriate to the facility of the business. But the workers in themselves don't make the actual product. If they did, why not just set up a collective? You can set up a trade union collective, which Chunk Yogurt of the Young Turds didn't actually want. He didn't want a union in his business, while actually speaking about it, he was an Armenian Holocaust denier.
The benefit.
Which makes it even stranger when Anna Kaspin is on a show and she's an Armenian. I don't know how that goes down well with other Christian Armenians.
To the benefit of the workers to suppress the interests of the capitalists. Because obviously the very nature of capitalism is to lower wages, increase prices, and this has an inherent contradiction that basically squeezes the working class.
But that's not true. That's not what happens, because everybody in capitalist societies are better off than those that are in communist ones for the workers. So none of what you say is actually true. Doesn't squeeze prices. So this is. I'm going to go through Marx. I'm going to go through the full writing of Marx. Marx was the worst economist ever. There might be individual points where you could pick out, like part of what Marx said would fit into the redistribution of wealth involving the negative income tax, which would increase wages for the lowest paid and low paid workers. That would be beneficial, and that would come from direct taxation and a direct redistribution of wealth. But apart from that, Marx and Engels were a couple of diddies, and they were the worst economists ever. So none of the stuff that they say, like as if the workers would take over. So basically what they're talking about is the workers stealing the creativity of the person, whether it be the writer, the entrepreneur, or whoever it was, stealing that creativity and keeping it for themselves. Not to redistribute, not even about redistribution of wealth. This is the workers getting it. The people who work for it are then entitled to the creativity of somebody else.
Class and it inevitably squeezes the capitalists themselves by leading to things like inflation and market crashes.
No, well, I think we're increasingly seeing that market crashes are a corporatist initiative where we've already seen that because of policy by Joe Biden, he has caused inflation. Not Putin, Joe Biden's policies have caused inflation. And that has probably helped other individuals who maybe have savings and want to increase their savings during an inflationary period. But the worst inflation has always been in left-wing countries. So let's not kid on. Always the worst inflation have been in socialist countries. So that's just nonsense again, what Doughball here's saying.
So really the central theory of Marxism is the belief in a state that works to serve the interests of the working class.
Well, I don't remember that happening in communist Russia.
To suppress the interests of capitalism.
Yeah, but why would you want to suppress my right to earn what I get? So if I'm very creative, like if I'm Beyonce, let's take a well-known figure, and I've won deservedly 28 Grammys, although I have to say anyway. But the fact was that she's won 28 Grammys. I don't know if she created work, but let's assume that Beyonce created and wrote her own songs. It's your right then to forcibly use the state to take her stuff and then pay you it. Now, taxes, I'm not all taxation is theft, but over-taxation is certainly theft.
and eventually get to the point where the need of the state itself is irrelevant.
So that's never worked in any socialist country, ever. So you can see his wee smug face here, doesn't work. If you want to do this, get some of your doughball pals, go into a piece of land, set up, and let's see it work for yourself. Get your pals, go and set it up, in a corner of whatever, doesn't really matter. Because I don't want to live in North Korea, I don't want to live in Cuba, I don't want to live in Venezuela, I don't want to live in China. Well, even though China is now, because the Chinese are an intelligent bunch, but the Chinese have rejected Marxian economics because they don't work. They don't work and embrace capitalism. What are you guys saying? Yeah, how we doing? Pure, milky, pure blood. How you doing, boys? So.
Okay. How much of that do you believe?
Oh,
100%. 100%. So we've got this idiot who obviously hasn't done political history talking to Charlie Kirk from the Young Turds. And I mean, really, you just actually couldn't write it. You couldn't actually write it. And he believes 100%, even where the dogmatic Chinese Communist Party have rejected Marxian economics because they don't work. And I could go through and actually destruct why they don't work. You can get collectives where the workers, we've already had in Scotland mutual companies like life assurance companies, banks. I think we had a cooperative bank. We have had cooperative supermarkets. So there has been instances where the workers have set up, and I don't have a problem with that. Workers have set up a collective. There's no issues there. If a bunch of people want to set up a collective, there's no issues, and redistribute profits to the workers. I don't have a problem with that. But to force me into doing what these communists want to do, go over and live over there, go and live in a communist country, and then tell me what it's like.
All of it. So you're just like a full-fledged Marxist.
100%.
So everything Marx wrote?
I mean, not necessarily every single word.
Well, just so I can understand, just so we can make this constructive. Like, just tell me your political philosophy when it comes to Marxism.
Well, I think that really is my philosophy, and we really have to look at, like, not necessarily Marx, who's the theoretician, right? Not even necessarily Engels. We also have to look at the practitioners of Marxism, right? So those
the Chinese Communist Party who rejected Marxism and embraced some sort of quasi-capitalist corporatist. Even almost, I would take somebody saying it was actually fascistic, kind of fascist, because the state is actually taking direct shares in the actual business. So I would say that the fascism is the merger between state and business. So
those people being like, obviously Lenin, Mao, today.
Lenin, Mao. So the largest mass murdering political entity in history. Mao killing 45 million through botched Marxist policies where they starved large parts of the population. 45 million people dead. Worse than Hitler, much worse. And Lenin, who murdered a lot of Russians as well.
You're a big fan of Mao?
And he's on a show called The Young Turks, who are a genocidal political party from Turkey.
Mao's a pretty interesting character.
How many people did he murder?
Look at him laughing. Let me just put this back. Let me just show you this scumbag here.
When it comes to Marxism.
Well, I think that really is my philosophy, and we really have to look at, like, not necessarily Marx, who's the theoretician, right? Not even necessarily Engels. We also have to look at the practitioners of Marxism, right? So those people being like, obviously Lenin, Mao, today.
You're a big fan.
Lenin, Mao. So he's on I'm telling you, he's on a show that's the Young Turks were a genocidal political party. He's quoting Lenin, who murdered thousands and thousands of people, and he's also quoting Mao, who murdered millions of people many more times than Hitler. I mean, really, honestly, there should be laws against this.
Fan of Mao?
Mao's a pretty interesting character.
How many people did he murder?
How many people did?
Why is he laughing at that? Well, how many Jews did Hitler murder? Now, I'm not a Holocaust denier. I believe Hitler did kill Jews, and I as well as others. And I don't find it funny. I don't find that funny. Why is he laughing at that? Now, I get nervous and laugh at strange things as well, but there's a difference between a nervous laughing. He looks like he's actually enjoying it. And he's also, and this is what I'm trying to say, he's also on a show called The Young Turks, which are also genociders. I mean, this is one sick individual.
Did he murder?
What is that laugh? It looks like the Joker, but for genocidals, just genociders.
I mean, how many people do you think he murdered?
Oh, well, how many people do you think he murdered?
How many people did George
45
Bush
million,
murder?
more or less.
And what are you getting that number from?
How about the Chinese people themselves? Rough calculations of international organizations,
What
mass
international-
graves.
What do you mean, the Victims of Communism Fund that literally...
So, this is just a Holocaust denier. He would probably deny the Armenian Holocaust as well. So once they kill you, you then really don't have a chance to speak. And this is what's happening in America. We've got Marxist organisations who are now using violence, thanks to people like the Young Turks, that these and causing divisions in the society, that he's now denying the actual murder of 45 million people actually happened. He would probably deny the killings in Cambodia under Pol Pot. He would probably deny the murders in Vietnam by the Khmer Rouge. He would probably deny what was happening in North Korea. Even if they got somebody from North Korea who came out, and there is a female dissident from North Korea who came out and actually spoke with regards to what's actually going on in North Korea. He will not listen. He is an ideologue and will not listen. Even if these people, he's very dangerous. He's a very dangerous individual. And I mean, more so than most, any Holocaust denier, whether even for National Socialism, which is also a Marxist, I'll come on to this, but it's also based in Marxism.
He puts out Nazi propaganda on a regular basis?
So the Nazis were Marxists. If you want to go back and look at my previous podcast on Hitler and Gert Eger, you have a wee look back in that, and we've already established that the Nazis were Marxist in origin.
I'm sorry, wait. The Victims of Communism Fund is a what group?
Puts out Nazi propaganda.
So this is between communists and Nazis. Remember that they were both the same thing. Hitler was in a communist organisation. Let me just check this. In a communist organisation. Oh dear. What am I going to do here? But yeah, that's the situation there. So he's basically quoting. Let me just see if I can switch this round here. I'll need to do something simultaneously. See if I can change this. Let me see if I can do this. Boom. I don't know if that's worked. No, that's not worked. What's going on? Oh, I've done the wrong one. Let's see if we can do this. Integrated. Woof! Right, that might work. It's not as good a picture. I was actually surprised at the quality of picture that you're getting from. Let me just move this way, get myself centered again. So
They literally have a statue. I mean, you have to
Wait,
be
so-
joking, right? You realize in the USSR, they list Nazi war deaths as victims of
Wait, hold on a
communism.
second. You're pro-Lenin too?
So Nazi war deaths as victims of Lenin. So, but both Stalin and Hitler were on the same side at the start of the war. Both of them invaded Poland, as it says in Marxist literature, that Poland was a non-country. So that both Marx and Lenin, but both Hitler and Stalin were on the same side when they invaded Poland. So, and because we've already addressed that National Socialism and Communism come from the same place, there is slight policy differences, but it's essentially the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, Lenin did a lot of really great things to the USSR. They literally brought what was a feudal peasant society to be a major world superpower.
So they brought a peasant society to be a major world superpower. Yeah, but that could have happened under capitalism as well. In fact, most of the socialist countries have collapsed. They always collapse because they don't last, because the underlying principles, the underlying economic principles of communism and of socialism generally, but and specifically of communism, doesn't work.
What about the
Matter of a few
Ukrainian
decades.
famine? How was that?
What about the Ukrainian famine?
Like the 6 million people Lenin intentionally killed through forced starvation and famine?
I mean, it's pretty ridiculous to frame that as intentional, right? Like, let's be real, right? There was a
Let's be real. This is just lies. This is untruths. The Ukrainian famine was actually happened because of agricultural reforms by Stalin. It was Stalinist policies and Mr. Jones, the film Mr. Jones, has it that Mr. Jones, a Welsh reporter, went out to Ukraine to actually witness the starvation because they thought, the communism was the next big thing, and he went out and saw the Ukrainians starving. 1.5 to 8 million Ukrainians, because of Stalinist policies, were killed, had to eat their own children because of and same thing happened in Germany. Famine happened in Germany because of the implementation of communist policies. Same thing happened in Ethiopia. All communist policies, and directly attributable to the implementation of communist agricultural reform.
It's a famine, and we can argue about the mismanagement of famines, but capitalism
The mismanagement of famines. This isn't a mismanagement of famines. This was deliberate policy that was implemented by the communists to change the way that the agriculture worked. This isn't a mismanagement of a famine.
manage famines
This was a deliberate policies.
all the
Well,
time.
hold on a second. What is
Just
a
look at
what
the
is a
Irish
kulak?
potato famine.
What's a kulak?
What do you think a kulak is?
I know what a kulak is. You tell me. You're the
No,
Marxist.
no, I want to know what you
A
think.
kulak is someone that owned a certain piece of land that was not allowed to own that same piece of land because of Lenin and Stalin's government. And if they owned more than it, what happened to them?
And do you know what? Okay,
So again, Charlie Kirk's correct on tapping into this, but it was much bigger than that. It was deliberate agricultural reforms that allowed, I think it was peasants to actually get pieces of the land, so it was all fair. This obsession with equality and fairness. But what they did was they actually got the people killed because the people who were put on the land weren't able to actually create the wealth that was able to be created by the people who Charlie Kirk was mentioning there as well. And this guy's oblivious. It's almost as if he's in a cult.
No, just answer the question. I'm curious.
what did happen to them?
They went to a gulag. Do you believe those exist?
Yeah, 100% gulags.
How many people
exist.
died in the gulag?
Do you know what a
No, just
gulag
like more or
is?
less. I just want to know.
Do you know what a gulag is?
Yeah, a forced labor camp, or it could be a forced death
You mean
camp.
like the forced labor camps we have in the United States of America, which, by the way, the
So
United States...
he's saying that I forced labour camps. I'm not really au fait with the American prison system as it stands. I don't know if you get forced to do things in the United States prison service or not. I'm not sure about that.
States has more people in forced labor than any other country.
Where?
In our federal prison system.
How'd they get...
So he's equating political prisoners with people who may or may not have broken the law. Now, there's obviously people who are not guilty and that are in prison as well. So that's something to bear in mind as well.
And our state
Wait, hold on.
prison
How'd they get to
system.
prison?
They committed crimes.
Oh,
And
okay, so it's not forced. They made a choice.
are you familiar with the
Wait, no, that was that. That's a
So they're not political prisoners. Although I would stick this guy in a jail just for being a political prisoner. There are terrorist organisations like Antifa, like Black Lives Matter, and they should be treated as such.
phenomenal red herring argument you made. I'm just
No,
curious.
it's not a red herring.
I just want to know how many people died in the gulags.
No,
More or less. I'm just curious.
How many people die in American prisons?
Hold on a second. I'm just
So
curious.
he's trying to equate the Gulag system for political prisoners, this clown, with the prison system for people who may have raped, murdered, killed children, done a whole series of other crimes. That he thinks that they're political prisoners, not actual judicial prisoners, which is completely incorrect, and it just shows you that he is a non-good faith actor. I don't know where he's been illogically schooled on what actually happened under Marxist regimes, but he seems to have his head somewhere near his colon, his lower colon.
Gulags, how many people died? I'm just curious. Give me a number. 10 million, 15, 20, 25 million, 30 million?
You know, there's this really amazing anecdote. It's really interesting. You see, and
So he's de facto a Marxist, Holocaust denier. He's a Marxist Holocaust denier. That's basically what he is, and he's also on a show that is titled after a group that committed genocide. So he's not privy, and now he's just lying about the killing of innocent people under all Marxist regimes. Every Marxist regime was murdering people. You can't name one that wasn't killing people, political prisoners.
100,000?
No.
Just I want a number,
No,
more or less.
Listen, because let's talk about how they get these numbers, right? This is a perfect example. There's this really great story,
So
right?
This is him into his communist denial. So this is him. If you just think about him being a fascist or not a fascist, sorry, a national socialist, the same principles are there for National Socialism as they are for this nonsense. And don't forget, they all stem from the same thing. They were all stem from Marx, who killed the people, who Marx and Engels advocated genocide. So it doesn't matter if it's a National Socialist genocide or a Young Turks genocide or this idiot's communist genocide. It's all still the same genocide stemming back, well, obviously Islam. And this is the worrying thing that we've got now, especially in the Labour Party, and also moving into the let me just get this and I'll just be with you in a second. Let me just move this back. Boom. So it doesn't matter if they're... I don't know if that's one. It doesn't matter if they are where is this? Where did that go? That's weird. That's very strange. Where did Charlie go? Is that?
Where you have Winston Churchill talking to Stalin. He asks, he's like, hey, how many people died in the famine? And Stalin, obviously not wanting to talk about it, they had bigger things to deal with, like World War II. He puts his hands up.
So he thinks that they've got this figure of the people murdered. Now, bear in mind, in the Ukraine, they still actually look at the Holocaust and still remember the Holocaust of these people, especially when you're forced to eat your own children, then And this guy's still smiling, and as if he thinks that we think that because what the ridiculous story he's going to tell, that he thinks that we're actually going to believe that. This guy is an idiot. He's a dangerous idiot. That Stalin put up his two hands and he thought 10 million. It's between 1.5 and 8 million. It's already been documented.
And Winston Churchill walks away and says, oh yeah, that means 10 million. He must mean 10 million. Now,
it must mean 10 million. The 10 million figure, as far as I'm aware, has never been mentioned. But what we do know is that there was millions killed.
Now, we can obviously talk about mismanagement of famines, but if we're going to talk about mismanagement of famines, why don't we talk about the people in India that Winston Churchill killed?
So, this is a thing that I heard for the first time about and recently by an Indian presenter. Now, I don't know Bengal famine. Bengal famine. Great. So, Winston Churchill. We asked author Herman to elaborate his writings. The idea that Churchill was in any way responsible or caused the Bengal famine is, of course, absurd. So, as far as I'm aware, the Bengal famine was an actual famine that happened in India. Now, the thing about this, and this is very much, again, an attack on the West, this, and especially if it's incorrect as well. Wikipedia. So, the Bengal famine happened in 1943. And horrific, like any famine's absolutely horrific. The difference between the Bengal famine and the famine in Ethiopia, or the famine in Germany, or the famine in Russia or Ukraine, was the fact that that was deliberately implemented by policies that the Marxists had done. The Bengal famine was a famine that happened naturally. So the Bengal famine in 1943 was a famine in Bengal province of British India, present-day Bangladesh, West Bengal and Eastern India during World War II. Now that's important because at that time with Winston Churchill, the U-boats were striking and we were losing tons and tons of shipping and importing any food substances. In war-torn Britain at that point, we were fighting in the Second World War, was a big problem. Now, should Churchill have sent some grains to Bengal to prevent this? I would have said yes, but I don't know what the rest of India. India's a massive place. This was only happening in Eastern India. Why was the rest of India? Maybe India, I don't know the agricultural distribution of India, but surely internally within India, being such a massive place, it would have been easier just to move it, some grain internally, or some sort of food substance internally. Out of a population of 63 million an estimated 2.1 to 3.8 perished out of a population of 60.3 million from starvation and other diseases agitated by malnutrition, population displacement, unsanitary conditions. Men sold their small farms and left home to look for work and joined travelling to Calcutta. Bengal's economy had predominantly agrarian and between half and three quarters of the rural poor subsisted in semi-starvation conditions, resulting in both a long-term decline per capita and rice growing numbers and land and labourers. So it looks like these factors were compounded by this by restricted access to grain, domestic sources were constrained by the emergency interprovincial trade barriers, while aid from Churchill's war cabinet was limited. It was limited, so I would suggest that emergency interprovincial barriers might have been the major problem here, not the fact that Britain was under U-boat wolf pack destroying the actual cargo ships at a tonnage. It was a huge tonnage at this point in 1943. I can remember it from my history classes. They were destroying the tonnage of food getting into the UK, which would have again probably starved and wouldn't have won the Second World War. But why there was emergency interprovincial trade barriers, that I would suggest that might be the issue there, and that maybe should be looked at as well. But it would have been, I would have suggested, difficult for Churchill to then go and give grain at this time when you would have to see what the tonnage was getting sunk by the U-boats in the Atlantic and coming into the UK at this time, but I'm sure it was massive. So again, more deception, more lies from this wee commie scumbag.
Why don't we talk about
so we're not here. I'm happy to do a whole defense of the greatest man of the 20th.
Mismanagement of famines. Why don't we talk about the people in India that Winston Churchill killed? What?
So Winston Churchill didn't kill the people. He was fighting the Second World War, doughball, and your Stalin guy had fought with Hitler to invade Poland, which also said in Marx's writings that Poland was a non-country. So you're just lying all over the place, and it was direct policy, Marxist policy, that caused the starvation. The starvation in India was not caused by Winston Churchill. The thing that Winston Churchill was criticised was not sending aid, but he was in the middle of a U-boat campaign where Britain was in the Second World War, unlike America at this point.
Why don't we talk about
so we're not here. I'm happy to do a whole defense of the greatest man of the 20th century, Churchill. I'm not going to actually do that right now. So was Alexander Solzhenitsyn a liar?
I don't know who that is.
He doesn't know who it is. He doesn't know very much. This snowball, no wonder he's in the Young Turds.
You're kidding me. You're a Marxist that you do not know who Alexander Solzhenitsyn is. He wrote a book called The Gulag Archipelago, which was a first-person account. He actually was...
Oh my God, listen to this guy laugh. This is a real creepy guy.
In a gulag.
Come on.
So, and you don't even know who he is.
Oh my God.
You know that people that worked on it admitted that they just made up a lot of those numbers, right?
He lived in one, my friend.
There's a lot of people who lived in the gulags. In fact, there's a really great...
yeah, and so they're liars?
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people...
So the liars, so anything that doesn't fit my communist world view is a liar. Oh, that's clever, isn't it? That's really clever. So if the guy lived during the Holocaust, so we can just dismiss Holocaust, and this is what I'm saying, that this guy is exactly the same as a Holocaust denier. This guy's not dissimilar, and it seems like Marxist and again those that purport for National Socialism, which is Marxism again, are both seem to be not prepared to take responsibility for the actions of the people that have preceded them in their stupid ideology.
So let me get this right. So the pastor who spent a decade in a forced labor camp with 1 hour of sunshine a day, Joseph Bondarenko, he lied about that?
I mean,
because he wanted to just spread the gospel? I'm curious, just kind of like what your belief is.
He seems to find it all so funny. So really funny.
On gulags. So we can just have like a similar...
Okay, I'll tell you. I'll give you a really great example, right? And you see the CIA actually ran numbers on this. This is really interesting. So somewhere around 10% of the people, right, that like were in the gulags during their peak, which by the way was after a civil war in Russia, right? Obviously with a white army that they had to deal with, right?
So the anti-communists, the good guys, the white Russians.
What your belief is on gulags. So we can just have like a similar...
Okay, I'll tell you. I'll give you a really great example, right? And you see the CIA actually ran numbers on this. This is really interesting. So somewhere around 10% of the people, right, that like were in the gulags during their peak, which by the way was after a civil war in Russia, right? Obviously with a white army that they had to deal with, right? And then the World War II with Nazi Germany, right?
Who they were in a pact with to invade Poland.
were political prisoners. But this is really interesting, right? I believe it was in the Gorbachev years, they tried to do a big reformation and granted a huge amount of amnesty. To
for political prisoners.
like tons and tons of people that were in those gulags. And do you know what happened, Charlie? Do you know what happened after that? This is something that
after
the
Gorbachev?
CIA documents literally
You mean after the
reported on.
liberalization of the USSR?
No.
Or what?
What happened? What happened to the people that were let out of those gulags?
They wrote books like the Gulag Archipelago that
No.
brought down the
Most of
USSR.
Most of them actually ended up right back in those same gulags because, this is to be very, very clear, that's their normal prison system. That is the normal.
That's just nonsense. That's again lies. Oh, you've got I think that's the Gulag trademark. Is that like the Jewish 5-star thing? The Gulag or Gulag, acronym for something in Russian, Gulag, chief administration of the camps, with the government agency in charge of the Soviet network of forced labour camps set up by the order of Vladimir Lenin. So this was not the prison system, because there would have been a prison system preceding this, reaching its peak during Joseph Stalin's rule in 1930s and early 1950s. English language speakers also used the word Gulag in reference to all of the forced labour camps that exist in the Soviet Union, including the camps that existed in post-Lenin era. The Gulag is recognised as a major instrument of political repression in the Soviet Union. So this guy's just a liar. Just a liar. Look at me, and he looks like a creepy weirdo as well.
Normal prison system that they had, just to be clear, because who do you think set up the gulags?
Lenin, we've just read it.
So you're trying to tell me that the people that were put in the prisons were not political prisoners?
No.
So the communist Lenin, who set up the gulags to imprison people in forced labour, weren't political prisoners. This guy is just a liar. This guy, see, this is the difficulty when you give idiots a platform that don't know what they're talking about.
What happened to the Mensheviks?
The Mensheviks, obviously, as we've discussed, the libertarian communists, like the anarcho-syndicalist, communists who were murdered by murdered and imprisoned by the Bolsheviks, the authoritarian communists.
What the forced imprisonment of the Mensheviks? Well, tell me how did Trotsky die?
I don't think that's a very good one. We all know how Trotsky died, but yeah, I understand. But just killers. If you don't agree with them, we're going to kill you.
What do you mean, assassination?
Who killed Trotsky?
Again, laughing at this. Now, I've got a nervous laugh as well. I laugh at inappropriate times as well. But this guy is well past me being slightly inappropriate and laughing like that. He's like the Joker, laughing at people getting killed all the time.
Look.
No, tell me, who killed Trotsky?
Are we gonna talk about economic theories?
We will.
Let's talk about the fact that your two ideologies that you sit on one programme that's by a genocider, and you're now talking about lying about other genociders.
I'm just curious, because I'm just trying to understand. You say you're a Leninist.
I mean, who killed Salvador Allende?
So 66 million people died in the gulags, rough estimation. Does that not concern you?
I mean, most of those numbers are inflated. Like, you gotta really...
So again, so it's not that people weren't killed in the Gulag, but it's just that these numbers are not true. We've just proven everything that this guy said. I don't know what Dobog's name is. Ben Carollo. Well, Dobog here has just lied so far, and he's obviously not on top of his game because he doesn't understand what it actually means or what the actual things were. So he's just sitting here lying, just making things up because he doesn't know. Either doesn't know or he's just blatantly lying.
Really understand this. Like, the reality is that was their normal prison system. If you look at the mortality rate in the gulags compared to the mortality rate in American prisons at the same exact time.
So let me ask you this.
So he's saying in the forced political labour camps, the mortality was the same as the mortality in prison.
So how many people died in the Holocaust, would you say?
I don't know. I'm not a Holocaust expert.
So he's not denying that there was a Holocaust. He's just saying he's not a Holocaust expert.
How about like 8 million? Would you say that's fair?
So I know at a minimum there's 6 million Jews that died.
So
I don't know if this guy's Jewish. He's got something that's strangely familiar. But but 6 million, 6 to 8 million.
why are those numbers accurate? Yet the Gulag.
So yeah, again, I don't know how they've calculated the 6 million, but I would have thought that they would have had records in Germany and other countries of people, there would be births, deaths, and marriages records. So I would have thought it would have been quite easy to identify who was there or who was no longer there. Obviously, it was also during a war. So these people were disappearing, but it was during a war as well.
Gulag ones aren't.
Well, it's very interesting that you bring that up, because the truth of the matter is, if you look at the people, right, if you look at the denazification of Western Europe, what you end up having is you have a lot of people like, for example, right, like Nazi government officials that get put in charge of West
So again, we already know that the Nazis were Marxists.
Germany, right? Then you have Nazi officials that get put in charge of institutions like NATO, and then you have a lot of these Nazis that quite literally set up institutions, right?
So that probably explains a lot why even the Conservative Party are coming across like a bunch of communists. I think that, and the fact that Klaus Schwab has got a bust of Lenin and he's controlling both what our monarchy and our Conservative Party are both saying, hence why the Conservative Party sound like they're conserving Marxism.
Like
put out information.
What do you?
And I think Boris was on the programme, the Charles Schwab programme for leaderships like Horsey Face in New Zealand and Turdo in Canada.
Put out information.
Like name one person.
Look at the first commander of NATO, literally. Look at the first NATO commanders.
Who?
Literally...
Name them! First NATO, first... On December 19th, 1950, General Dwight Eisenhower became NATO's first Supreme Allied Commander. So the first general was General Dwight. So he's saying that General Dwight Eisenhower fought against the Nazis. This guy is a doughball, absolute doughball. What is this guy? He is a complete... So Eisenhower is now a Nazi, apparently, to this clown.
Literally brought in people from Nazi Germany. Are we going to pretend that Operation Paperclip is not a thing?
That is true because of nuclear science, and that they did bring in Nazi scientists because they were on the way to actually create the first atomic bomb, and they did bring in these scientists. But whether or not they were scientists or actual hardcore Nazis, we don't know.
United States did?
Operation Paperclip was in conjunction with Operation Mockingbird, which was a CIA propaganda campaign, which I don't quite answer the question of the accuracy of gulags. Anyway, that's a little bit of futile.
So what he did there was a bit of whataboutery. What about the Nazis? And we all know the Nazis, as I said, were Marxist as well, and the origins of Hitler and National Socialism were in Marx and the left as well. So that's a total red herring. It's a total straw man.
I'm just trying to understand.
But what he's doing is whataboutery. Rather than actually answering the question, he's answering the question with a question.
And though, like, maybe we're just on different planets here, quite honestly, because...
Well, he's delusional. I think that's what you're looking for. He's also on a show that advocates, his young Holocaust, that Young Turks is a Holocaust show, Holocaust sport show, and they're also very much anti-white and anti-Western, which, again, if you look back to the Ottoman Empire and the sex slavery and the killing of the genocide, who were enslaved Europeans into Islam, and then they killed all of them after them working to kill other Christian Europeans.
I've actually met countless, thousands of people that were in these gulags and their stories and their firsthand perspectives, and they did nothing wrong to be put in there except they had the different political viewpoints, or they were pastors. and then you embrace a political worldview that does that.
Well, let's take this.
And this is the worldview that's getting pushed on us just now, whether it be the Green Party, Wee Nippy, who's a postmodernist Marxist. This is all getting pushed through Dr. Evil Klaus Schwab, and it's permeated all of the 5 parties to the extent that the illiberal, liberal, undemocratic Democrats in the UK have got a poster of the racial pride flag on their actual Twitter account.
This, for example, let's imagine that you're a serial murderer in the USSR, right? Let's imagine, and then you go to the Gulag, right? What's the
I'm not imagining. I'm talking about pastors. I'm talking about
no.
people that have.
This is the reality. Because if you want to talk about,
it's not the reality.
He's just making stuff up. The reality is just in his delusional wee head.
There's plenty of documentaries. Like, look, for example, right?
There's plenty of documentaries. Name one. Charlie, you should be holding this guy account and saying name one. And actually Googling, you should be able to Google in front of him and actually show the people who is the first person. He's just making shit up. There's nothing that he said that's actually true.
Okay.
So I'm just
Radio Free Europe did this really great interview session where they literally went.
This is just a complete smoke and mirrors by this clown.
To people that were in these gulags, and it was so funny because when radio.
Oh, it was hilarious. Oh, forced labour camps. Absolutely hilarious. Am I still on here? Nah. Mate, I'm doing a podcast. I'll need to phone you later. Don't phone me until I phone you. Whoa. So, back again. So, what you guys saying? Is empty on here? No. Oh yeah. Hi there, guys. How we doing? I obviously doesn't know the answer. What an idiot. Yeah, exactly. It's not just he doesn't know the answer. All he's saying is, what about the first guy that led NATO, which was Eisenhower in 1950? So he doesn't know that. So, and Charlie is not holding him to account and saying, who are you talking about? What documentaries? Name them. I need to know. You can't just say grandiose, blasé statements and not get called up on it.
Free Europe puts out this video about, these people who used to live in the gulags.
So these people in the political concentration camps of Lenin and communists are now in Radio Free Europe.
They asked them, what do you think about Stalin? And they basically said, because remember,
Stalin, who's killed hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not millions and millions of people, if you include these incompetent policies. Death by incompetent policies should be a criminal offence. Nicola Sturgeon should be up on the fact that she has done policies that are criminal and caused other people's deaths.
Right. You remember that the USSR was invaded by the Nazis, right? And you also...
Yeah, but they were also, the USSR was on the side of the National Socialists, who were also Marxist as well in origin. So... this is where Charlie should be calling him out. I think Charlie's deficit in knowledge as well. This is where he should have been calling him out on this.
Yes, and then they deterred the invasion.
You
but what happened
remember
before
that the USSR
they wiped out. They almost wiped out all of Ukraine.
So the Civil War was against people who didn't want to be oppressed by a bunch of scumbag Marxists.
You also realize the Civil War.
The Civil War was between the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks.
Well, I don't know if it was just purely between that, but certainly I don't know if the White Russians were Mensheviks or whether they were actually anti-communist forces. I'm not quite sure. So I think it's anti-communist, and that covered whether it be monarchists or capitalists, or I think there was more. And I don't know if it was really a war against the Mensheviks. I think the Mensheviks were slaughtered.
Because they couldn't determine what blend of communism they wanted after they
overthrew
overthrew the Romanov dynasty, right?
Well,
he's laughing again. And not only that, they killed millions of people.
Have the White Army. Do you know what the White Army is?
I'm very familiar with the White Army.
You know the royalists, the people that were trying to...
Yes, of course, but
okay.
I'm
like,
just...
So
we'll close.
So
on
if
this
you have a
topic,
civil war,
but
are you going to put
I just
people
want to
in
reinforce
jail
for the audience here,
if they start
which
a civil
is
war in your country?
Yeah, but I don't think that you did have a civil war in America, and I don't think that happened. The people were in forced labour camps after the Civil War.
I know the United States doesn't like to jail insurrectionists.
Remarkably,
but that's what they did in the U.S.
just made an argument that was pro-Gulag.
Yeah, he's made arguments that are Holocaust denying, pro-Gulag, so he's into forced labour camps for his political opponents. This guy's a real scumbag.
Yeah, they had a prison system. That's
It wasn't a prison system. We have to stop this. This is a forced labour camp for political dissenters. The Gulags wasn't the prison system. The Gulags, as far as I'm aware, were a political prisoner system.
It kind of does explain some of your other views because
because he's an extremist. He's an idiot and an extremist.
Living on different planets.
Yeah, he's completely devoid of any reality. That's why he's on a show called The Young Turks. Can you imagine he was Ben Shapiro, and he was on a thing called The Young Nazis or Hitler Youth or whatever it is. That would be the equivalent.
Like Team Reality, Team Narnia.
So
how's
our
that's very well summed up, Charlie.
prison system better?
Because it gives individual freedom, allows individuals to have freedom of speech, doesn't force them to believe what other people don't want to believe.
For example, you got a lawyer.
Allows individuals to make their own choices, what's best for them, rather than the state dictating.
Independent judiciary. You have a jury of your peers. You know what a
There you go.
show trial is?
Do we have
what is
an
a show trial?
independent judiciary?
Well, we do have show trials in the West. I can name under Nicola Sturgeon. Manny Singh's gone to jail. She tried to put Alex Salmond in jail. I might be going to jail. And what's his face? Who's the other nice fella who was in the thing? So there's multiple people. The press have tried to put in jail who probably would be political prisoners but are being prosecuted under so-called crimes.
Hold on, what's a show trial?
What's a show
He sounds like a lunatic, this character.
trial?
Yeah.
I don't know. Ask Steven Donziger.
Who was General Tukhachevsky that Stalin
ask
took up?
Steven Donziger. You think the United States doesn't do show trials? Look at Guan.
Yeah, I would agree with him there. I think all Western societies are doing show trials.
Guantanamo. What are those
Hold on a
people
second.
doing
What
in
you're trying to do
Guantanamo
is
Bay?
indict the entire Western legal tradition and conflate it with the Leninist, Stalinist. We're going to kill half the population we don't like. Look,
No,
you can
what you're trying to do is you're trying to take a country that had to deal with a civil war, that had to deal with an invasion, and compare that to the United States today.
But it's not just there that they've killed people. It's China, it's Vietnam. Let's have a look at the list. It's every country that they've been in. They've tried to do this Marxist thing. They've got full lists. It's full lists of people that have been murdered, atrocities. So estimated numbers of victims for 65 million in the Chinese Republic, 20 million in the Soviet Union, 2 million in Cambodia, 2 million in North Korea, 1.7 million, that's probably the Ethiopian famine in Ethiopia, 1.5 million in Afghanistan, 1 million in all Eastern Bloc countries, 1 million in Vietnam, 150,000 in Latin America, 10,000 deaths resulting from the actions of international communist movements and communist parties not in power. The execution of tens of thousands of hostages. According to Curtis, the crimes by the Soviet Union include the following: execution of tens of thousands of hostages and prisoners, the murder of hundreds of thousands of rebellious workers and peasants from 1918 to 1922. The Russian famine. So we've talked about the Ukrainian famine. So the Russian famine, which they were trying to impose Marxist ideologies on agriculture, which is different from what happened in Bengal, which was an actual famine, and there may be criticism that the people weren't helped fast enough, but these people were eating their children, which caused the death of 5 million people. de-Cossacization, a policy of systemic repression against the Don Cossacks between 1917 and 1933, the murder of tens of thousands in the Gulag during the period of 1918 to 1930, the Great Gulag Purge, which killed almost 690,000 people, the Kulagization, resulting in the deportation of 2 million so-called kulaks from 1930 to 1932, the death of 4 million Ukrainians in the Holodomor famine and 2 million others during the famine of 1932 to 1933, deportation of Poles, Ukrainians, Moldovans and people from the Baltic states from 1939 to 1941, and from 1944 to 1945, the deportation of the Volga Germans in 1941, the deportation of the Crimean Tatars in 1944, Operation Lento, and the deportation of Ingus in 1944. This and other communist death tolls have been criticised by various historians and scholars, and an attempt to estimate a total number of killings under communist regimes depends on greatly on definition, ranging from a low 10 to 20 million to as high as 110 million. So again, just absolute nonsense that this wee diddy's talking.
Close with this. You are defending genocide.
Yeah, that's right. He's on a show called The Young Turks of a political organisation that did the genocide. Young Turks, let's have a look at this. Why don't we? There we go. It's all here. The Young Turks, genocide. So Chunk Yoga and his daft, he's absolutely dopey nephew who is now sitting in the lap of luxury, who is no Albert Einstein. And these are all the people. This is it. The history.com. That's interesting. History.com. So let me just make this bigger. The Armenian genocide was a systematic killing and deportation of Armenians by Turks. Turks obviously not from Turkey, Turks obviously from Turkmenistan, of the Ottoman Empire in 1915. During World War II, leaders of the Turkish government set in motion a plan to expel and massacre Armenians. By the early 1920s, when the massacre and deportation has finally ended, between 600,000 and 1.5 million Armenians were dead, and many more forced removed from the country. Today, most historians call the event a genocide, preeminating systematic campaign to exterminate an entire people. So this is what this guy's on. This is not Charlie, but the other fellow is on that programme.
Which is quite honestly a remarkable thing to see in real time.
Stop right here,
you are defending genocide of Joseph Stalin and Vladimir Lenin.
Clear.
Yeah, and he's on a programme that's that we've just mentioned is a genocidal programme. He's obviously a loon ball.
The intentional destruction and killing of 65 million people.
This is what I'm talking about.
And no, there's no middle ground in genocide. That's your opinion.
And he's still laughing at it. Look at him. Honestly, look at this fellow laughing at this. Honestly, I don't know how to actually describe this. All right, yes, Davey. How you doing, Johnny boy? How you doing, sir?
Moving on. Has there ever been a successful example of Marxist theory in action where the workers are truly empowered?
No, is the answer to that. I think I may actually leave it there and just break this down into 5 slots. How would you fancy that? See if we can get it. This will be part 1. And I'll just do, so we're up to the first part. So I'll destroy him later on. Might be easier to view as well. Right, my fellow baby gorillas, love you guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. It's quite interesting. Good man. Hope you're doing okay. Yeah, not too bad, John. Not too bad. Thank you. We will talk about this later, and we'll go through the other 5 points, 4 points. Right, my baby.